Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. Today I got a fun and exciting video for you guys today because I'm doing 5 more of the rarest games or pieces of hardware in my retro gaming collection. Because some months ago I did a video talking about 5 of the rarest items I own. You guys, I wanted to see another video in that series going through my retro gaming collection tour, so that's what we're doing today. And I'm definitely spoiling one of the games up top. It's going to be Power Instinct Master Melee, but I don't think you're going to be able to tell what the other games that I'll be talking about are on today's video. Before I get too far involved though, to be a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But since I spoiled it, let's start with Power Instinct Master Melee, one of the favorite games in my entire retro gaming collection. I purchased this thing like 17 years ago, and honestly, at that point in time, I thought I kind of overpaid for it, but the value has definitely gone up around the $4,000 mark. But I paid all of $500 for this thing like 16 or 17 years ago, and to say it is one of the cornerstones of my collection, as far as my love for it would be concerned, is an understatement. There's just something weird and wacky and strange about Master Melee that I absolutely loved the first time I played it in arcades, and I still pop this thing on maybe every 3 or so months. Although at this point in time I definitely just use Mr. FPJ. The cart's kind of just hanging out on my shelf for the rest of my Neo Geo stuff. And while this is a game that you can go on eBay and maybe find 1 or 2 copies for sale for right now, it definitely is one of the lower print runs as far as the Neo Geo AES is concerned. Now some of the rarest games on AES are going to be more in the $30,000 to $40,000 category, so this definitely wouldn't even be considered that big of a heavy hitter for the Neo Geo AES. But for my taste personally, I just absolutely love having this in my collection, and it is something that I would absolutely never part with. And when I bought this thing, I think the owner had played it maybe once or twice, and still to this day there's no insertion marks on the cartridge. Although honestly I don't really care about that too much. I'm just careful when I put the cart in, and everything seems to work perfectly fine. But if you've never played Master Melee before, I can't stress how much fun this game truly is. No, it's not going to rival something like Mark of the Wolves or Alpha 3 or even Street Fighter 3. It's something going to be a tier below that, but as far as the inventiveness and just the sheer weirdness and creativity on display in Master Melee, you cannot find a better game in my opinion. And there's just something about collecting Neo Geo AES games that always makes me happy, even though at this point in time I'm basically done buying them, because any of the games that are the heavy hitters that I do not already own, I have absolutely no desire to actually purchase because they are just too wildly expensive these days. But a full color manual with a weird fighting game on Neo Geo AES, and one that is incredibly hard to find, just makes me happy. And again, even though I play these things exclusively on Mr. FPJ on the Neo Geo core, now just taking these carts down from the shelf, even to get them in front of the camera, and kind of spend a little time with them, always just gives me a sensation of satisfaction and joy, playing around with the most ridiculously large home cartridges you could possibly get your hands on back in the day or even today. So as far as one of the 5 rarest items in my collection goes today, Master Melee is one. Now in the original video I talked about the Panasonic FC21 as the console-shaped 3DO M2, so I figured in the second video I should probably talk about the FC35. It is still a 3DO M2, it's just in a big industrial box and has a DVD-ROM drive as well as a hard drive versus the CD-ROM in the console design. But this is still a 3DO M2, and I've probably had this thing now maybe 10 or 11 years at my count. This is something that can be incredibly hard to find. Every once in a while 1 or 2 will pop up on eBay or Yahoo Auctions Japan a year, but honestly you could go an entire year or 2 trying to hunt this thing down and still not getting an opportunity to buy one. But because this was an industrial appliance, it might still be sitting in some showrooms there out in the car world, maybe in the back rooms, because this thing was used to basically exhibit different videos for GM vehicles back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And in Japan there was a special model that was released with a program called Viz House, which was a 3D CAD kind of visual design studio for houses, both the architecture as well as the interior design. But even though everyone wants the FC21, the console-shaped 3DO M2, what they really should be looking for is the FC35, because this is where you actually play some of the games that were in development for the 3DO M2. If you want to play IMSA Racing, this is the only piece of hardware out there in the world that is going to allow you to actually play one of the games in development almost finished for M2. You put IMSA Racing in the 3DO FC21, it is not going to do anything because it is not signed, and that is a little bit newer of a piece of software. So this box right here is basically the most fully featured 3DO M2 that's going to play any of the in-development games were meant for the home console world. Unfortunately, still to this date, we can't get it 100% to play the arcade games, so it's definitely still something that is being worked on now and again in the background. Or something like Iron Blood, before it became Iron and Blood on the PlayStation 1, a Dungeons & Dragons themed fighting game, was in development for the 3DO M2 as an enhanced version, making the PlayStation 1 version basically look like a slideshow in comparison. This hardware was so incredibly powerful for its time in 1996, 1997. Just take a look at the overall visual quality of this model here with all the polygons. This was something that Nintendo 64, Saturn, or PlayStation 1 couldn't touch, and honestly it was kind of even feeling like it was exceeding Sega Model 2 in some aspects, although it wouldn't touch Dreamcast or Model 3. If you take a look at this model right here, you can see how many polygons are in it, and this was just a prototype. It wasn't even a finished model. And as far as kind of the rarest items I owned are concerned, it isn't just the Panasonic FC35 that runs this demo. I also have the full source code along with all of the assets to this build for the 3DO M2, and honestly one day I just need to sit down and string some of the character moves together that aren't actually yet in the build. But I have all the assets, I have all the source code to make Iron Blood run, and I did release it kind of on archive.org for everyone to enjoy back in the day, but honestly, you still have to have an FC35S to be able to play this thing, and that's why even though this might not be the most attractive looking 3DO M2 design out there, it is the unit that plays the most amount of games, and honestly that's all you really want to do with this thing. Now moving over to the PC Engine, you might be thinking I'm talking about Rondo of Blood here because of course that is an exceedingly rare game, or at least coveted, but I'm talking about Dead of the Brain 1 and 2. This is the last release ever made for the PC Engine. There weren't any games released for the platform after this that were official releases from NEC or honestly any other publisher that would have had a license to make games back in the day. Now this is a collection and kind of a downgrade of Dead of the Brain and Dead of the Brain 2 on stuff like PC98, MSX2, and the FM Towns, and even X68000. This game is a visual novel with a horror theme, and this game came out so much later in the lifespan of the PC Engine CD than any other game, kind of made you wonder why this thing even got a release. These are incredibly limited, they did not have a big print run of them, and if you do go on eBay today and try to pick one up, it is not going to be cheap if you can actually find one. And even though this isn't the PC Engine footage I'm showing right here, it has been translated into English, at least the first game, so you can sit down and enjoy part 1 of Dead of the Brain. You'll just have to wait for translation to come out for part 2. But again, that is in and of itself absolutely amazing that somebody even decided to translate the first part of this game, and I hope someday we'll be able to actually see how the story ends. If you've never heard about this before, Dead of the Brain, I would not be surprised. It is a deep cut, even in Japan, with people I know that love collecting visual novels. A lot of them don't actually know that Dead of the Brain exists. If we take a look around the back, I just love the case art for this game, and the only reason I even know Dead of the Brain exists is forever ago I saw an image of the cover art on some of the best covers of all time for PC Engine, and that made me actually look into what the game was and pick a copy up, and I'm so glad I did. And it even came with a spine card because I got this copy brand new forever ago, and even though I absolutely quote-unquote ruined the resale value by opening it up, I think I paid maybe $40 for this thing sealed, and if I'd left it sealed, we'd be talking about 4 digits, not 3, but it would still be in the high 3 digits at this point in time. I just love this franchise. It always makes me happy to play it. It might not be for everyone, but it is one of my favorite parts of my collection. It is also one of the rare items I own in my collection, and clearly I do enjoy Dead of the Brain because I don't just have the PC Engine version. I have Dead of the Brain on MSX2, and I also have Dead of the Brain Part 2 as well, so I definitely grab these things wherever I can, that one being the PC9801 release. So definitely check this out if you've never seen it before. I'm not saying it's a hidden gem, I'm just saying it is a ton of fun, and at least for the first game you can play it in English, and that's all that really matters because you just want to be able to sit down and enjoy these games. And when I say it's got some good gore in it, some great pixel art, and a really fun cheesy story that basically absolutely jumps the shark towards the later end, I 100% mean it. You'll never know what's going to happen in this unless you play it, and the only wrong way to play the game is not to play it in the first place. But Dead of the Brain Part 1 and 2, one of the rarest items in my collection, and the PC versions, definitely no slouches either. Now sticking to the horror theme but moving platforms entirely, this is Splatterhouse on the FM Towns. This is something that is a quote-unquote recent pickup for me, maybe 6 years or so ago. I had had maybe 1 or 2 many drinks, by that I mean about 5 shots too many and 6 high lives too many, and I decided to take a look at eBay on my phone taking the train home. Lo and behold, I just decided to pull the trigger on a game I'd always wanted, and even though this thing has definitely gone up in value, it was not cheap then, and the next day when I remembered that I actually purchased the thing, I thought to myself, maybe that was kind of stupid, but absolutely zero regrets. This is the best port of Splatterhouse outside the arcade original that you could get on hardware back in the day, and it's definitely something I love popping out of my collection. And even though we have a Splatterhouse core from Mr. FPJ, and that would be the de facto way to play, there is something uniquely charming about the FM Towns version of the game. And back before we had stuff like arcade emulation and MAME, if you were a collector or gamer in Japan and you bought the FM Towns version of this game, you de facto had the best port that ever existed. And even though it's in a big fun looking box, the only thing in that box is this one jewel case for a big box PC release on FM Towns that really doesn't have much going on for it whatsoever. So it's one of those things. I absolutely love the game. I love having it on my shelf, but compared to a Neo Geo game of the same size, at least on the case, you're not getting near as much going on for the actual money. But honestly, Splatterhouse, just one of those games. I remember the first time I played it was at Great Escape in New York when I was a kid. It was in their arcades and I absolutely fell in love with it. And obviously I started playing Splatterhouse 2 and 3 on the Sega Genesis after that. While I would always love to get a Splatterhouse arcade PCB, I didn't get there early enough. A lot of the things in my collection just because I've had them forever. Because if you actually wanted to buy a PCB for something like Splatterhouse today, you're talking well over $1,000, and if it's a very clean example, you might even be over $2,000 depending on who's trying to sell it to you. So even if you don't want to spend the money on the FM Towns version of the game, it'd still be cheaper than what you would get in the arcade PCB. And I like collecting FM Towns games, and I really like collecting Japanese big box games. Whether it's for the FM Towns, the Sharp X68000, the PC98, or the MSX2, they're just really fun and kind of remind me of collecting big box PC games in North America, except with a complete different vibe because most of them come in plastic cases, and obviously all of them come in kanji. That's one of those things. I've always loved having a copy of this game. I've always loved the Splatterhouse franchise, even the remake, which honestly was uneven at best, but as a fan I still found something to appreciate about it, and it's definitely one of those games that I always love just taking down off the shelf every October and playing through for an hour or two, because it's the type of thing, when Halloween season hits, I'm taking Splatterhouse out, I'm putting it in my FM Towns Marty, and I'm giving it some gameplay fun. And even though I have an optical disc emulator, I sometimes will still spin up the original CD on my backup Marty just to hear it whir and know that the Splatterhouse copy I own is sitting around in that machine getting one more gameplay session for October. Now, the last item in this video is a Konami NWKTR that is a version of Thrill Drive, and by default that would be rare, but at the point in time that I purchased it, it was broken, making it one of the more common rare boards. That is because I would say 9 out of 10 of these boards just absolutely do not function, and trying to repair them is a metric pain in the ass when it actually comes to getting anything working on these things. There was Thrill Drive, there was Racing Jam, and there was Racing Jam Chapter 2. Now, I had a working Racing Jam as well as the ROM upgrade board for Racing Jam Chapter 2, and those two boards would be considered incredibly rare as well. But honestly, there's something about Thrill Drive. It is the hardest of these games to find, and it's the type of thing you could search one of these boards working for years or even broken for years, and you really wouldn't find much whatsoever out there. And it took me over a year of playing around with this thing to honestly even figure out what was wrong with it in the first place, outside of having some presumptions, because the problem with owning hardware like this is when it breaks, basically no one's ever repaired it. So I kind of pick these things up, and when I figure out how to repair them, I'll go ahead and write it up online. That way the next person that searches it is going to find my post, and sometimes when I have a question of something I fixed forever ago, I find my own information out there on the internet and kind of laugh to myself. But for years, this thing would just hit hardware error -11N. And while I knew that had something to do with the network board, I wasn't able to solve it the first time I took a look at it. But honestly, sometimes I spend 6 to 8 months between the first attempt and the next attempt because I've got a lot of different stuff going on. And as far as the source of this board, this was given to be my collector in the UK. They had had it in their collection forever, could not get it running, and all they wanted to know was that maybe this thing could still show signs of life and actually end up being a playable version of the game. And I don't know what it is about Thrill Drive. Obviously, a lot of people remember it, but it was a rare arcade machine back in the day, and honestly, you just can't find these things anymore. Try as you might, you'll have to have some safe searches, and like I said, might take you a year or two to actually even find a version of this game for sale. That's even if you're lucky, because I have a safe search for this still, just to kind of track when they might actually sell, and I haven't seen one for over 3 years. But when you get into this type of rare arcade PCB collecting, you basically have to know how to repair everything, or at least how to troubleshoot these boards, because when no one else has come before you, you basically have to figure out how to diagnose these issues yourself and basically reverse engineer things from the start. I went through so many different RTC chips, so many different EEPROM files, basically just trying to get this thing to do a security handshake, because I was concerned that maybe this was a version of the game that hadn't been dumped before. It's one of those things, maybe I just didn't have the right code because the code had never been seen before. I tried solid state chips as well, RAM chips, to basically get everything running, all of the different security codes, and this again is what it takes to collect rare arcade hardware. You just basically have to become an engineer for Konami even if they aren't paying you. and I tried 3 different rounds of trying to repair this thing and making it less rare than a broken board, even though those are rare, and actually getting it running. And you'll see right here, RTC check passed. I actually repaired this thing, and you've either already watched a video on it or I will show you shortly. But a not working NWKTR board with thrill drive is rare, a working one is incredibly rare. But those are 5 more of the rarest items in my collection. If you want to see more videos like this, just leave me a comment down below, because if they keep doing well, I'll keep dragging things out of my collection and getting them in front of my camera. Because honestly, I love collecting the weird, the strange, the out there, the arcade boards that need more love, and I've definitely got a lot more that I could showcase in these videos. But if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Otherwise, I'm done. Definitely don't be like me and collect this random stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video though, and go play some Splatterhouse. Bye bye.